like on our last call, did you know that it was going to go on Netflix?
I knew it was going to go on Netflix, but you never know how that's going to go. And they weren't announcing like a date when we started, so I didn't know.
That's what I thought.
Um,
Okay, yeah, it could have been 6 months from now. It could have been the day after.
I Yeah, like they kind of told me. I did finally, like about a week or two out from the release, I did get like a date from them, like that it was going to be the 8th, and then it wasn't listed like when they were putting up anything, so it was Danzel was coming out, their big kind of Millie Bobby Brown movie was coming out. So I was like, I guess we're just not going to get mentioned in the press release that we're coming out on the 8th. So whatever,
But I mean, it's trending now, right? Like you're in
Yeah,
the
no,
top
it's
10 and
doing great.
everything.
Yeah, we're number 6, so we're just
Do you
riding the
know
wave, man.
much about like how hard it is to do that? Like like how many movies do they list each month? Do they give you any of that data, or did you research it to where it's like you're one of 8 films that are announced and or anything like that?
I haven't done all the research on it. I know that they definitely it's doing something right on their algorithm. I think sure, like some part of it is working. People are watching it through. People are clicking on it. Like those things must be working. Um, but other than that, like I don't know enough to say. I've had a meeting with Netflix and kind of heard just sort of how it kind of works. It's really kind of it just sort of it is really how people click and what people are interested in and how they respond to what they're watching, and all those things sort of make it more desirable for them to push in whatever way they do. So it's
Well,
sort of
I guess I'm gonna not to just like there's more questions I have about Netflix, but
yeah,
just since just to bring people back, since people that are going to watch this hopefully will be new viewers and they'll want to know who you are and like what are we talking about. But it's like I just had you on, we're talking about your
yeah,
new comic book, but you had made this movie and I'd seen your trailer, and I remember thinking the trailer for Your Lucky Day, sorry I kept calling it the wrong name last time, I was
yeah.
like, this looks really good, for
Oh,
especially
thank you.
for something that's so many movies just go unnoticed and kind of deserve it. And I thought at the time, I was like, this one has all the like everything you would think of to make sort of a high quality film.
Yeah,
The acting looked good, the tension, the quality of course the cinematography, the hook. I
yeah,
mean, we've all sort of uh I don't, so it just seemed like, oh, okay, this has all the qualities that should make a successful film.
right.
Like it just kind of had all going for it. And then that's why at the time we were just like, yeah, it's on these streaming platforms. I was like, dang, that kind of is a letdown because it's like there's got to be some more. To me, it's like this. It's like if he's on the same platforms my films are, as much as I love my films and my friends' films,
Yeah,
uh yours just seemed like a level up. So it'd just be like if a film with a level up of kind of the rest that's out there can't get on these big platforms, it's like, well, then what can, like, how hard do
yeah,
we, if you can't do it with top talent, top quality story, top quality, so it's just like it's nice to see that, oh, okay, I was wrong. He is a level up, and he got where he needed to be, and it wasn't just like an overlooked film. But I want to, I guess,
yeah.
introduce us to not your whole career, but just like your name, and then I want you to just cut right in and be like, what I basically want to know, like the I'm gonna stop talking after a second and just have you talk, but I want you to go through like the whole story of basically like kind of where you were to where, like, where were you when this project started, like, and then how much did you oversee, in the sense not just like a director, like did someone bring you the script, were you a part of the script, were you involved in the financing, who were you partnered with, how did they find the financing, and then
Right.
all the way up to like, okay, and then once the film was done, how'd you go about distribution, did you get a sales agent, did you do it yourself, did a
Yeah,
producer
yeah.
take on a lot of that role, and just walk me through the timeline from behind the scenes, from perspective of somebody that makes films who kind of understands what you're talking about, you
Yeah.
know and now I'm going to stop and let you go.
Oh, great. I'll do what I can. So, my name is Daniel Brown. I directed the movie Your Lucky Day. And then we met because I was working on a comic book. And you've done movies, so you get the indie film scene more probably than I do because this is my first time. So I'll try to be brief, but kind of go over it because I think making an indie movie is. I knew it was going to be tough. My background is in advertising. I have friends who have made indie movies, so I kind of had like a loose sense of what that looked like. But I've never done it myself. And in my brain, having done commercials for a long time and done it at different levels of like music videos or even like small commercials and then big commercials, like there's a huge range there. So I kind of built my career doing that. Um, but I had never really like made a movie, and it's a very different process. My experience so far has been very different than even like the skills I thought would be really transferable. So that's sort of the basics. So go back a little bit further, about a while ago, maybe 12 years, maybe longer. Jesus. I did a short film called Your Lucky Day. So it's same basic premise. I had an idea. Um, Maybe even back up a little bit further. I had done a trailer, like a fake trailer for one of those. I don't know if you remember when Grindhouse came out, the Robert Rodriguez, Quentin
Yeah.
Tarantino movie. I did a fake trailer for that just because, like, on a whim with a friend, and that had gone really well, and we were selected to the top three, and so I got to go down to South by Southwest, and we like showed the trailer there. Hobo with a Shotgun won like the grand prize, and I just got like a free plane trip, and I got to go meet Robert Rodriguez and go around the studio and walk around, and it was amazing. And then I got to go to the premiere of the movie. So, but if you don't win, then you don't get the Hobo with a Shotgun experience, I assume. Um, so then, anyways, at that time, I had met uh, the actor Ryder Strong from Boy Meets World at a movie at South by that he had there that year, and just sort of talking with him. I think he kind of knew a friend of mine too, who was a production designer. Anyways, they had worked on like a low budget movie together, and so after I had met him, I was like, oh, I should write a movie for him now that I've met somebody famous, and I know who Ryder is. Like it was like real, like, oh, I should write something for him. Not knowing who would go for it. So I wrote a script based on this idea that I had that you would have win the lottery, and then would have someone would want to steal it from you, just sort of like you're in the idea kind of just came from being in a convenience store.
Seems
The
obvious,
oh
but
yeah,
genius.
it was just like, oh, this is an idea, and like the idea of I love those kinds of stories, like the Partner's Tale, like those kinds of like people turning on each other for money, that kind of stuff was always something I've loved. And then I felt like, oh, if you had this much money, like it's such a different animal, and you would have to do certain things differently because of how you could actually get a check in. But it would be a lot of, it would be enough incentive for people to behave kind of really out of um more than like $120,000 or something like that. Like, oh, it's a lot of money. It's millions of dollars. Not just like a little life changing. It's very life changing. So I did the short, and the short did really well. And then I did like the stupidest thing you can do if you're trying to make a movie and if you want to be a filmmaker in a serious sense. Is the short did great online, and then I went and did meetings, and they're like, "Oh, we'd love to make a movie out of it," and I said, "No way! I got no idea." And the short, everybody dies. So I was like, I don't even think that makes sense as a movie. Like, I wouldn't want to spend an hour and a half and watch everybody die at the end of it. That's not really what I'd want to do. Maybe someone else wants to make that movie. I didn't want to make that movie. Um, anyway, so I just sort of said no, and so I kind of closed the door on all these like. If no one knows anything about Hollywood, like there's a general meeting and then there's like a meeting with purpose, and the difference between a general meeting and a meeting with purpose is like night and day. And you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
otherwise, you're just kind of like talking to one another, and there's no real reason for the meeting to be taking place. And maybe they'll get to know you, but if you don't live in LA, there's like it's a whole game
Yeah.
that I was unaware of as like part of the thing. So anyway, so years go by. I started working in. I was already working in advertising, but the short had basically gotten me commercial work. So I started working as a commercial director, and kind of the end result of that was I still wanted to be a filmmaker, something I wanted to do. And what happened? I had got an email from a producer years later, maybe 9 years later, something like that, asking for the rights to the short, and I didn't want to sell them. They wouldn't even kind of get to money conversation. It was just like I didn't want to sell it, and
Yeah.
I felt like, okay, well, if I don't want to sell it, then I should be, then I have to do something with this, right? It felt like a concept. To hear someone else ask about it was like, okay, this is a concept that has enough legs, maybe, and if you're going to make an indie movie, it's such a huge unknown, right? And like you hear so many, everybody has a story and how hard it is to get anybody to pay attention. So at least I felt like that the core concept worked enough for me to be like, okay, if I'm going to make a movie and if it's going to be a single location thriller and it's going to have all these like things that, like, because making a movie is a big, dangerous endeavor. And if you're going to get people to back it for money, like all those things are like, who knows? So anyways, I just sort of was like, okay, I have this thing and I wrote a script. So I had an idea to like turn it into a feature. Um, Kind of like two main ideas that sort of opened it up as like, oh, this is how you can make a feature out of this idea and not just sort of have like a really kind of contained short that ends in 15 minutes. Um, so then it was just in my back pocket. And then as happens all the time in indie movies, I was attached to do a horror movie down in Austin and I had quit my job in advertising to go do it. And then the funding fell apart like last minute, like I'd been there for
Gotta
30
love it.
days.
Yeah.
You gotta love it. So I was like, oh well, fuck, what am I gonna do? And I had already kind of, like again, because I was in advertising, I had done pretty well. I had sort of earmarked a very small amount of money for like, I'll just go make a movie, right? Like just go make a movie with friends, like a calling card. Like I had done shorts, but like unfortunately, like you kind of show that you can do the job to get the job. It's like that weird catch 22. Like, how do you show that you can make a movie unless you made a movie? I just kind of
Yeah.
been around and seen enough. And I had a friend who unfortunately had passed away a few years ago named Lynn Shelton. And she was just like this sort of amazing indie filmmaker she would make like a movie no matter what, one a year, basically. And it would either be like one that was like for almost no money or it would be a bigger movie, like, so she kind of just had this way about her. And she made the kinds of movies that you could make like that, like they'd be like, Your Sister's Sister or Hump Day, and she'd made these like like little mumblecore movies that had she could get big stars in them, and they would shoot them over like a couple days, and generally she would get a distributor, and then there wasn't a huge financial thing that she had to kind of cover to sort of make back the money I think for the movies, and then in between
Okay.
that she was getting television work.
And how
So,
did you
anyways, it
know
was
this
more like this.
person?
She was my teacher in college, so she was just my editing college teacher
Oh,
who
okay.
hadn't made a movie when we were like close with each other in college. She was like, you're my favorite teacher. And I was like, I guess a good student or whatever. We got along really well. And so it was just like a relationship that we had that had already, like when she made her first movie, I was working at a place called Digital Kitchen and already had maybe in some professional sense, I was kind of at a different place in my career than she was. And she was like, oh, hey, I got this movie. Like she had like this amazing first feature story where like, just like the luck of what can happen sometimes. Like she was making like experimental docs, and there was like a film company in Seattle briefly. Blah blah blah. They gave like five people movies to make. They thought she was going to make an experimental art film, and she just made like a kind of conventional indie movie that did really well. Got into Slam Dance, and just kind of got
Nice.
her started making features. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's not what they had expected. It was like a surprise. Oh, okay, you're going to make something commercial.
That's so funny she
Um,
did it like the opposite to where like most people are like, here, make this good, successful, normal movie. And then people are like, nope, I turned it into this art house project.
Yeah, and she because everything else she had been doing was very much like experimental art documentaries, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So she had just turned into like a conventional feature. But like that had sort of turned into this very fruitful career for her. So like being very inspired by that and kind of really sick of advertising was sort of like something I was kind of ready to do. Almost basically at 2019, I had done like a little script read for the movie and I felt like, okay, I can make this movie for almost no money. Who knows how it'll turn out, but at least then I'll have made a feature. Kind of like that was the plan. And then COVID happened. And then, I was just, there was no real good reason to stop anything. But
But
I think,
you
and really
you
because
wrote the feature version, right?
yeah, I wrote the feature
Okay,
version. It was just
okay,
like
okay.
something that was it was just like in my back pocket. You know what I mean? Like in the way that like, that's just who I am. I think I need an outlet of some kind while I'm working, especially while you're doing commercials. I felt like I needed something to sort of feel like that part of my brain was still working and I still really wanted to be a filmmaker and I didn't want to kind of lose the spark for that.
Was that your
Um,
first? That wasn't your first feature screenplay you wrote, though, right?
I don't think no. I'm sure I taught myself how to write a screenplay based off like a comic book and just sort of like I'm sure I'd written another one or two. In the way that you write
But still, I
feature
mean, it's
screenplays.
basically like one of your first projects. I mean, That's
Yeah.
it's almost like that's like your first main feature script, and
Yeah.
you made it too. I mean, that's a major feat. Well done. Sorry, I
Thank you.
cut you off.
No, no, no. But I think that was sort of, it was just in my back pocket, and it was something I had written. Um, and so it was just ready to go in that weird way. So when the other movie fell apart in October, end of October, I had made friends with the casting director on the movie that had fallen apart, and it said, kind of like, it was like looking bad, and I was like, oh, this is gonna fall apart. It just like there was too many telltale signs. No one, the producing team on that hadn't told me that it was going away yet, but it was, the writing felt like it was on the wall.
Yeah.
And so, just sort of inspired by Lynn, and just like, okay, I have to make a movie. I've already taken this time off. I should go make a movie in some way, shape, or form. And I, like I said, I had sort of earmarked a very small amount of money. Like, okay, if I, I paid for short films before. So, like, in the same way, like a short, I was like, oh, I'll just double the budget of a short, and hopefully,
Okay.
just like, and like, I knew it was a one location thriller. If there was no actors in it, like, I had to be very, I was trying to be very realistic, um, and crazy at the same time. But so when I sent the script to that casting director, she said, I like it. I think you can probably get a cast for this, but you have to shoot before January because that's pilot season. And during pilot season, you'll never get anybody on for like the super low budget because like SAG has amounts, right? Like, so there's like ultra low, low, whatever. Like, there's SAG
Yeah.
basically minimum based off the budget of the movie. So we kind of just sort of, we were under the ultra low amount. So it's like, okay, as long as we stay under this, that kind of like dictates lots of production things for you as well. Like, I really can't pay too much. I can't do too many days. Like, it just sort of kind of comes with the territory. And like, hopefully people will take a flyer, right? Like, so this is a 15-day movie, 16 days, I guess. Um, I
Who
don't know if I
planned
counted this
out
right.
that the like shoot length and all that? Did you do all that, or did you have a partner
I
who
did
did
a lot
that?
of that. I mean, because I've produced stuff, and I've been like in, like, I understand like the shoot process really well from just my commercial background. And then I had a line producer from commercials who we'd done Wendy's commercials and we'd done an Air Force commercial. So like, he had read the script on one of these, like, like on a long production schedule that we had. I think, and I said like, oh, what do you think? And you're just showing your friends, like, what do you think of this script? I need some feedback. And he had always really loved it. So when the other movie fell apart, and because I was almost had, and I was like, I had this script, and I had asked this, my casting director from the other movie, which she cast this movie for me. She said yes. I said, hey, would you be interested in working on this with me? He said yes. I think, and then as soon as basically she started kind of putting the script out, we got back interest. And one of the first names that came back was Angus, who had been in Euphoria, and my wife had told me about him because I hadn't seen the show. But she was like, there's this kid who's really great. She had read the script, and then I watched the show. I was like, he's amazing, but like, I'm not going to get him at the budget level I have. There's no way that's going to happen. But then he liked the script, and it was the kind of, I think it was pre-season 2. I think after season 2, because that he was such a bigger role in season 2, but no one had seen that yet. I still think I would have been able to get him for the budget that we had. But he was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like fun. I like the script. It's a character that would be good for me."
Okay,
And he got,
so he would have. So your budget was basically below ultra low, which normally means you probably can't really get anybody of a name. And
right. It's an
and
ultra
you
low
and
unless
he
they
if
want to
he
do.
hadn't have liked your script, he probably you wouldn't have been
Oh,
able to get him for the budget.
yeah. No, I mean, I mean, at that budget level, you really can't. You shouldn't really be able to get anybody unless they want to make the movie and believe in it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there's just no. There's no financial reason. Like, that, I can't offer them money. I can offer like points and stuff like that, which I gave away freely. Like, okay, if, and everyone's sort of just consigning to a dream and saying like, okay, yeah, that's 15 days of my life, 14 days, 10 days. Like, it's not a lot of time. It's nights. If it's worthwhile, great. If it's not, it's just like in that weird pocket too. It was like we shot it at Christmas time, like in December, really fast, and everyone was just sort of on board for that, the dream of the ride. Like, I built a pitch deck and I had the script, and then with Angus on board too, I think then people got kind of excited, like, oh, okay, this, I could see him in this part, I could see this script working, just sort of, it has those elements that you don't know, so it's sort of, and then it was a crazy time though, like, so for the month of November, I'm prepping the movie, and I'm also trying to raise more money because, like, now that I had Angus, I was like, I can't just spend the amount of money I had planned to, I need to spend more. because there's more opportunity here. Like if I can, still going to be a very low budget movie, but there's a more opportunity than, you know, if I can get up some stuff, it just sort of,
Yeah,
a lot of that
so
stuff
it
just sort of felt
levels
like,
up
okay,
your movie in production value
yeah.
all the way. Even if it's
And
still,
it,
you went from below ultra low to ultra low.
yeah, it's not that big of a jump, but it's like, oh, that's a big deal for us. And,
Yeah.
but it was in that same way, like, but with Angus and some of the cast we picked up, like suddenly I think it became a much more attractive movie to investors. Um, and there's also the moving train factor. Like, okay, this thing is coming. It's happening in, a week and a half. This is, I'm, like, please come on if you'd like to. But it was, definitely like a scary time. We had built a little shitty, we had rented a warehouse in a sketchy part of town, like in LA, and just sort of take a chance, like
What year
in
was this?
it,
22?
2021, right? So the end of
Okay.
21, so right before 22. So it's December 21, and we got the space, and I'm, like I kind of backed in, like I built the schedule based off like, okay, I know I have to be shooting on the first, I have to be done by the 21st. So we just sort of started shooting. I know I was like, I'll start shooting outside and like work my way into the store, and hopefully by the time I get inside the store, I will have built enough of a set to shoot. Like, and I had kind of built it that way, and also, like we had looked at some places. No place really was open even to letting us go in there and shoot. And then also we had like some gags and some stunts that like I knew would be difficult to do in a real store. Like I knew I wanted this sprinkler
So you
system
you
to
built
go
built
off.
the store in the warehouse.
Right, but yeah, like the warehouse looked like the front of us. It looked like
Oh,
from the
I got you.
outside that it
Okay.
had like that. It looked like one on the outside already, but the windows were all like painted white or whatever. And it had been a weed grow house because it smelled like weed, and there was like 400 extra walls. Um, and
Wait,
like I would just go to the
I
dollar store. And, yeah.
back up just a second. Did you have like a producer partner, or did you personally try
So I
to
had
raise the funds? Like, did you actually like go to people you knew, or did you go to a bank, or how did you go about like the funding once you had to do
so
that?
so I had a producer partner and I was doing it as well. So um and so it was like a little bit of there's a little bit of friends and family, and then one of the producers, the same line producer, came on, brought in like kind of like a Chinese investor pool, like of friends of his wife that all kind of were like, oh, that sounds like a fun idea. Just like
Okay.
people kind of in the way that you beg for money, right? Like, okay, you have to. It's such a bizarre business where you're
Yeah,
like,
it's
hey,
all
look, no
friends
one's
of
ever gonna,
friends, basically.
yeah, like no one's ever gonna pay for this. Like I had reached out to some people, but like one of the producers of the movie that fell apart, he got me in touch with a few people, but like those things just kind of, it was moving so fast, like I really needed to kind of like move a lot quicker. Um, but even, I think even that like in the friends and family, like people who've always believed in you without like a cast, that they could be like, oh, okay, I can see how, like it just sort of like somehow the cast, it was night
But
and day in terms of
did
like,
you have to like go through the motions of like I've never really had to do this, but to where like you have to sign paperwork and go through someone owns a percentage here and this and that and
oh
go
yeah,
through
we have all
things like
that stuff.
that.
I had that's all part
You
of
did
like
all that yourself?
I'm doing that myself along with one of the producers, but a lot of it I'm doing it myself because I'm just sort of like just kind of trying to take care of it as I go. Like it's not like
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was the thing. I mean, I never wanted to produce a movie, but like here I was. I was like, okay, I have to do it. It has to
Yeah,
happen
you've
right now.
taken on like every role. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably I think because of the time crunch, it just sort of ended up falling on me, and I was like, okay, this is happening. In the same way, and then like as soon as Angus was on board, I was like, well, this kind of has to happen. But every part of it's like, oh, I hope nothing goes wrong because like if someone gets COVID, I'm going to lose this space. I'm not going to come back, be able to come back and take it. I'm not going to pay for this thing to, like that. I won't hold the warehouse for that long. Like half of the cast was from the UK, so like not half, maybe a third or whatever. But like key roles were like going out of town as soon as the 21st came around. So it was just sort of like, how am I going to get anybody back in here? There was just I remember like it was just sort of 2 months of like really like intense hell.
Yeah, yeah.
And like my production designer who I had worked with on commercials like fell up, like he showed up on a Saturday. We were supposed to meet at Saturday at the location. I shot for 2 days. Like I said, I had to start shooting. So I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot these two things. I shot at my cousin's house. I shot out at like a junkyard. And then, I had the weekend to prep the store, and then we were going to start moving into the store. And like I show up and he's not there. I was like, "Where are you?" He's like, "Oh, I have another job I had to take." And I was like, "You didn't tell me." And it was like I've never been in LA where you couldn't find crew members like that before. It was insane. So you would call like 20, 30 people, which never is like that in LA. You know what I mean?
But
Normally it's
because of like
because
the
COVID had just
restrictions that were
ended.
going on.
Well, like the restrictions had just been lifted, right? So nothing had been shot for like a year almost. And then suddenly, like, oh, now
Oh,
everyone
so
can shoot.
now
So like
everybody's working.
everybody, it was like everyone in LA. I've never seen it so busy. I'd never seen it like this, where like you couldn't get anybody, you couldn't get a PA. You would
Yeah.
lose
Okay.
somebody, and you're calling like 20, 30 people, and you'd be like, okay, give me. And I would spend half my day doing that. I spent half my day trying to get someone to pay for the movie. I get spend half my day like you're just sort of like beg, borrowing, and stealing to sort of build this thing as definitely as the wheels are like it's in flight already, and
Did
just
you
trying to
have
get the
to
thing
like
going.
organize where people were gonna stay? Um,
And thankfully, it was all in LA, right? So that was one of the like the benefits of LA. I had to kind of organize where I was going to stay because I was really the only out of towner, and everyone else is just in LA. So like, thankfully, it's if actors were from the UK, they had friends that they were staying with. It was just sort of like kind of like it's one of those,
okay. What made you
like everyone's
people
kind of.
from UK? Were they cheaper or like, or
It,
did they know people or
I think
something?
it was they were interested in the script, and like they lived there, right? So
Yeah.
it's like
Okay.
when you're an actor, like so like Elliot Knight is from the UK, and had kind of moved back. Like he had been in LA for a long time, but because of the pandemic, he had kind of moved back to London for a little while. So like our first Zoom call, he was in London, I think London or outside of London, and then came back like right before he started shooting, and then left immediately after. Jason O'Mara is from Ireland, so he was like, "You're just kind of like beg, borrowing, and stealing to kind of get whatever you can."
Okay.
And hopefully, and people got interested in the script. So I think it was sort of everyone kind of just took a flyer in this weird way where like, okay, the train's moving, people don't mind joining that, I think. And then yeah,
If that's like just proof that like if the like you said, if the train's moving, people and the script is good, which clearly it was, uh, they're gonna get on.
yeah,
It's
I mean,
but man, it's so crazy. Like even yours seemingly working out perfectly. There's just so
yeah,
much where every story you
oh,
hear. I mean, every
yeah,
production's a nightmare.
totally. And I have a lot of my started in post-production. So like I have a lot of post just experience. So there's like stuff that like, and I had done the short. So like some of the stuff like shooting and some of these other like things that I had spent like on the short, I had lost so much time like doing squibs and like trying to do sparks and all this other shit and in camera. And I was like, it didn't work out. And I spent 2 hours to get a shot that didn't fucking work. So I was like, I'm not wasting any time on that shit. I'm going to do everything in post. I'm not
Okay.
having anyone shoot a gun. I'm not having any blanks. I'm not having any of this shit. I don't want to deal with it. It's never going to work anyways. And so just sort of
Wow.
like
But
looking at
luckily
it,
you
like
have all those skill sets
I
to
had
where
the
you're just
skill
like,
set
we'll
for it.
fix it in post.
Yeah, like and then it was stuff like, with the production design kind of troubles that I had, it was sort of like, then there's things that like that I didn't plan on. Like I had to do a bunch of like screen comps and stuff like that. Like I made like lots of production decisions. Like okay, I'm going to use one lens for everything. I'm going to shoot everything on a 35
Oh,
millimeter
so you
lens.
were
I'm
this
going.
DOP as well.
No, I was just I had a cinematographer, but like I was making like real like hard and fast like creative decision rules with him. Like, hey, look, there's no
Okay.
way we're going to get this movie done. I mean, maybe you could have, but I was like, I don't want to waste any time swapping a lens. Let's take because I only part of like it being so busy too was like I don't think we can get anyone really at this rate to stay more than like 10 hours. We ended up doing more longer days, but like everyone was like, okay, we'll do it for the terrible rate and we're only going to give you 10 hours. And I was like, there's no way this movie's going to happen. I have to get it all done in 15 days and I have to shoot everything out in 10 hours. Like that's fucking insane. Um, so I was just like, oh, well,
I'm already
how do
feeling
you get
like
that
the
done?
goosebump pressure. Like it's like, oh,
So like every second of the day was like, okay, how can I speed this process up? I don't want to lose any time putting anything on the sticks. I don't want to lose any time putting it on a different lens. Like anything that was like a time change for us was death. So I was like, okay, then we've got one lens. And we kind of, and we watched a few movies. I had read about a few things, and then I tried to do research on movies that had like all been shot on one camera or all on one lens. So like I had done a little bit of research on that just to be like, okay, let's say this is how we're doing it. Let's watch a movie that looks like it's been all done like this. Um, and I also like movies that sort of there's other that it kind of you pick a lens to sort of kind of focus in the vision and like so it kind of has a wiggle look just by default. Um, because if you use every lens in the kit, then it doesn't really have that like we shot it like you know a Chivo movie has like every it kind of looks like a Chivo movie because he tries to shoot like on a 14 or an 8 or whatever. Like so, it
Okay.
always kind of has that like yeah, it's a big lens. It just sort of it
I
kind of
can't
becomes
see
like
that
part of
kind of stuff because I'm not in the cinematography world. So like that, I wouldn't be able to notice stuff that you even think is probably obvious. But I get
who
what you're
knows. I mean,
saying
I think
though.
yeah. So we just sort of made like lots of those kinds of like really like hard and fast decisions. And I always think of like on a different like on a commercial shoot. There's an app called Artemis, and you can pick all your different lenses. You know, I remember
Okay.
doing that on a commercial once, and a DP friend of mine is like, who really likes that app? And I said, who? He's like, fucking camera houses, because then they can charge 10 times what you need because you just bought a bunch of lenses that you don't know. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, let's try this 35
Oh
one, and then
yeah. Yeah. As if
suddenly you have
like
this
that's what
giant
you're
kit.
gonna no. In reality, like you said, you're like, let's just do it all in one.
Let's just do it all in one. Let's move quick. It was a lot of those kinds of decisions, and a lot of that stuff too kind of came out of just necessity. I liked to storyboard, but I didn't have. I'd only had the first sequence that I had just sort of storyboarded for myself. I didn't have time to actually storyboard the movie other than like I would do these really rough garbage boards every morning or every, whenever I would wake up, normally in the morning. I didn't do a lot of sleeping on the shoot, I'm going to be honest.
I don't see how you could. Did you
Because you're
do it
shooting
all
at
on
night,
one camera?
all on one camera, except for like there's, security camera stuff. So we shot all that
I
on, I have
I I
like,
will watch the movie. I'm sorry, I haven't seen it yet.
oh, you should, okay. I shot it on, so like on the, I had a Black Magic, and we'd done like a test on the Black Magic too to sort of see like was it going to do enough, and we just didn't kind of like the final results for a whole movie. Like I did tons of insert shots or whatever with the Black Magic, and it ports well with the Alexa, but it just had some other limitations that made it like not the right camera. But we shot all like there's like there's security camera shots that we shot
What
with
kind of camera
one.
did you shoot it on?
We shot it on an Alexa just again because of familiarity of the DPs. Like I trust this camera, and I think those were like you're making those kind of. So we shot it on like a Master Prime 35, and we shot it on Alexa, and I forget what, like an older version. Like you can rent them. You can rent a good Alexa now for pretty cheap, and we kind of decided it should look like Super 16. So we kind of like picked a lot of stuff based on this idea that we're kind of going for like a Super 16 kind of look. We
Okay.
want, we don't even need, so I don't, we doesn't need to be on like a 4K sensor. It doesn't need this. It doesn't need that. Just sort of making those kind of stylistic choices up front so that we're not like putting ourselves in a bad position later on. Um,
So, uh, how many? It's like three main characters, right? And then, but did you have to get
there's
police
like
cars and
four.
stuff like that?
We rented, yeah, you rent a day, like, but every one of these things is like everything's a charge, right? So we rented
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we thankfully like they're mostly in other cars, but we just try to do everything as cheap as possible. So, like one of the main cars in the movie is a G wagon, you know,
So
and
you
so
got to
we
rent a
rented
G wagon. That's not
we
cheap.
rented a G wagon, but we rented it through Turo, which was way cheaper than doing it through a thing. But like then that meant like we were getting a new G wagon all the time. So like sometimes it had a different color interior, sometimes it didn't, sometimes it like, but
Oh,
we had like movie license plates, so we would put the movie license plate on there and shoot that. Um, so it looked like the same car, but it's not the same car from shot to shot. Um, but it's fine.
but
No,
you
I
had
don't think
all
anyone
this stuff
notices.
lined up. So, like, was there ever days where you were like, you didn't get everything you needed to do that day to where you couldn't move on to
Oh,
the
for
next day?
sure. Yes. So I mean, you kind of have to keep moving on. I think So a lot of it, again, like I tried to put together like a production plan that would be helpful in like how we were going to do everything. Yeah. I mean, some days went over. Some days we got an incredible amount of stuff done. And at some point, midway through the shoot, maybe mid back half, I was like, we have to get two cameras because I'm not going to get enough footage otherwise. So we were a one camera shoot. And I was like, this just isn't going to work. We need two cameras running because otherwise I'll never get the movie, right? So you just sort of start making those decisions at some point. And you're like, okay, two cameras starting tomorrow, get somebody in here because there's no way we're going to get this movie done. And
Okay.
you kind of, but like in commercials, you just sort of learn to make your day. So there was days that we didn't make our day, and I was like, okay, well, I have to make that up, and I have to make choices about what's going to go away, or what can I cut from the script, or what isn't as vital, or like those kinds of questions are sort of just doing on the fly. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of the script was like pretty interconnected. So I'm like, I have to shoot this, I have to shoot this, I have to shoot that. But it was like little stuff that it was like, okay, if I'm not going to switch locations here, how can I get this done? Kind of like, really sort of prioritizing like getting everything that we could get done shot, as opposed to like, perfection on every moment. It was like we have to.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't. I'm not going to shoot 10 takes of this. I'm going to shoot a couple takes, and we're going to move on because if I, you just have to just start prioritizing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, so that was mostly what the movie was in every shape and form. And then, like I said, because my editor on the movie, Nick Pizzillo, I should talk about one of the other producers too. So, but like Nick, we've been friends since college, so he was like, this is like my best friend, and we've worked on the short together. And he moved to LA, and I haven't. But we were just good friends, and I was like, kind of like he'd always wanted to make a feature, so like it was kind of like a dream for both of us in this weird way. He had done another movie, and he's done some other stuff, but like, um, I stayed at his house while we were working on it, and then we kind of, again, like he was down to like make the best movie possible, and I was down to make the best movie possible. But we didn't have, I didn't have the budget to pay him properly. But what I could do, we could do together in the way that like we were able to sort of, we would block out these chunks of time, right? Where like, okay, we shot the movie, and he took off the month while we were shooting, so he would be editing while we were shooting in case there was a hole or something. Unfortunately, he got behind, and we never like, the goal was like, if something's missing, you can tell me right now, and we can figure it out. That we never really achieved that goal. Um, but it was nice to have, like, on an indie movie, there's the stuff of, we had like a really hard night, and you're shooting at night, and you're going outside, and we have rain machines, and it's just miserable as shit, right? So we had like a rough night, and I was like, I need you to, I think it was maybe on a Friday or something. And I said, Nick, you need to cut some clips together because I need to show people that this isn't going to be a piece of shit. Because, yeah, you know what I mean? You just sort of,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
rough time. I didn't look, and any movie can feel like you're doing something stupid. Um, but like, add to that, like, that everything's super cheap and the snacks are bad. And you have all these, like, there's none of like the indicators of that it can be okay when it's done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And no one's going to watch, there's not enough, there's no playback. There's
It
no,
feels cheap the whole time. And
right.
so, yeah, there's nothing that you can like show it. You need something to show people to be like, I know it looks cheap, but that's not what
It's
it's
gonna look
gonna turn out
it's
to
gonna
be.
look cool, right? Like, oh, we shot the train sequence. There's a train sequence in the movie, and I had like planned to do it all in post, but like, we're on set just like under rain machines, and no one can see anything, so it's all like, you're just saying, trust me, it's gonna be cool when it's done. It's not gonna be as stupid as it feels right now, where you're pulling a gun and nothing's happening. So like, it was just sort of, how do we help that part of the process feel like less cheesy, or whatever you can do.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so that was, I think, one of the great days where like we cut the trailer and everyone got super excited about what that could be. We haven't even a trailer, just like a couple clips. Like, take some clips, shove them together, show that this isn't going to be stupid. Um, just to kind of help people. We're shooting in a tiny
Build
little place. It's
morale
still
or whatever. Yeah.
build morale. You got to, like, that's part of the job, is to build morale, I think. Um, but yeah, so what he and I would kind of get together over, we shot the movie, and then having done some like shorts that took a while to finish, because a short takes forever. Like, that's part of why I wanted to make a movie, because like, you make a short, but if you're going to make a good short, like, it takes forever. Like, you're not going to like shoot it over the weekend, and if you're going to make a calling card short, it's going to take forever. You're going to work on it forever. It's going to like, you're going to do it while you have some other job going, because you can't really pay for it. You can't like not work while you're doing it. Like, I just kind of knew all that, and having done the shorts. So after I finished the movie, I was like, well, I can't work until the movie. I can't like take on any work. I did one music video, and I was like, this fucking killed me in terms of like getting the movie done faster. So I was just like, yeah, I'm not gonna. I lost months doing all the stupid little shit you do when you like take on a job
Yeah.
like a music video. Like, and so I just sort of was like, okay, I have to only do one job, and that's make the movie. And I picked up all these extra VFX shots. But so me and my editor, we would get together. We did like one big push for 2 weeks. And went out to my mother-in-law's house. No one was there, and we were just sort of like, all right, we're just going to stay in this house and work on this movie 24/7. We'll go for walks. We'll take breaks. We'll watch the movie together. And we
Did
would
you
cut
have any
like that. Like we would,
did you have
yep.
any of the soundtrack in your head while you were making it, or was that all post?
So some of the stuff was like stuff I knew I wanted in the movie. So yes and no. I knew I had like ideas. Like I knew it was going to be a Christmas movie. This is one of those things. I was like, it's going to be a Christmas movie. It takes place at Christmas time, and there's all these like public domain Christmas songs that are like some of the most famous Christmas songs. So I was like, okay, I'll do. So I used like old versions, and knowing I was like, I'll cover this. I can do a cover of this song in a cheap way. The only problem is that some of the ones I chose are only public domain in the US and not public domain worldwide. So I kind of got my ass
Oh,
kicked a little bit on that. When we kind of, after the movie sold and I got an international sales agent, then it was like, oh, well, you actually have to, these are different rights, like it's not public domain. And basically outside of the US, like some of the songs were just, so something I had like extra costs that I hadn't planned on.
of course.
But you make dumb choices. But I would, get a music supervisor on first, I would say, in that scenario. And then I had, like again, it was like my composer I had worked with on commercials, and we had conversations about what we wanted. But it was like I was like moving so fast. It was more like I knew kind of what I wanted it to sound like. I knew I wanted like a Christmas kind of vibe. I wanted like an intense thing. So in the normal way, though, you just use temp score, temp pieces of music to sort of put together what you think the movie's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Um, and then again, like you don't have money, but I can offer time. So like like me and the composer, we spent a long time working on the thing. Like, and I wouldn't see him for 3 or 4 months, and then I would have like chunks of music to place in. And I was just sort of, we would do, me and the editor, me and my editor Nick we did the movie, and then we kind of we would go ask people's notes, and then like he would go work for 2 months, and I would go work on some VFX shots, and then we'd watch the movie again and be like, okay, what's wrong, what's right, kind of like get
Okay.
that extra piece of like because like I think when you're watching a movie, and I think if we had had more people, it's just great to kind of have that enough space so that it's not like so fresh. Like, how do you kind of start looking at the movie in a with fresh eyes as much as possible to be like really ruthless about what you're watching, because you can kind of just get into like, oh, everything's there, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, the goal was to be hopefully ruthless about what the movie was, what could go, what could stay, where were questions that were kind of getting in the way, or whatever it is. Um, so yeah,
So
that's
once you
kind of
had
some of
it
the
sort
basics.
of like, once you had it in the can or like finished,
Yeah.
uh, what was your next step? Did you go to film markets? Did you submit to film festivals? Did you have any
Well,
idea how you were going to distribute it?
I think so. Like, definitely distribution was on my mind kind of from the get go. And so one of the first things that I did, I think it's one of the smartest choices I made early on, because again, like I've done so much commercial shit, but like I've never made a movie, and there's like all this extra stuff that you don't know when you make a movie. And I had I just got a request for like a DOD, which is like Day of Days. It's an actor shit, right? Like, and it felt like the email was like, I should know the answer to what they're talking about. I shouldn't Google how to do every part of this fucking job. I felt like an idiot. And I was like, that's stupid. I'm going to go. So I went back to my casting director, Jessica, and I said, I need a producer who's made a movie before to come on to this movie and help me do some stuff. There's some answers I should know, I don't know. Adam, who also worked on the movie, was a line producer on commercials. He'd never made a movie either. So like, we were kind of like the blind leading the blind on making a movie. And I was like, I need someone who's actually fucking done this before. So she said, oh, hold on, let me send the script out. I'll tell who's attached already. And you're looking, basically this guy named Luke Barnett kind of immediately responded. He read it like, when I met him for coffee, like I was still building sets and doing whatever. And I go and meet him like 2 days before we start shooting, maybe even I've already started shooting at this point, and sit down and we have a conversation. And he's like, look, man, I'm here to help you make the movie, especially in the post-production process. Like, I know I've done this before. I've done a few other movies. He did a movie called Fear Inc. and a few other things. So he's like, I know what this is like. I can help you in the second part. And I was like, that's exactly what I need to hear. let's do it. And so, but he'd already had his month plan. So like Luke showed up once in a while on set, but most days he wasn't there. But he helped me find some people, and he had already done a movie. So one of the things that kind of happened was as soon as we were moving quick. He basically, after we had like a rough cut put together, we then went out to sales agents, and that was sort of the process. And that was sort of what I had said up front too. Was like I didn't really care, having done short films, and like so when I did Your Lucky Day, you do the thing, you submit to everywhere, to every film festival, and like everyone is like, oh, what's your festival plan? I was like, I don't really have a festival plan. I don't really care about festivals. It's not high priority for me. I want to sell this movie. I want someone to buy it. Like that was more important to me. Like that was always like the North Star. Like I don't care what this movie gets into. I want this movie to sell. I don't care. Maybe that was the wrong attitude, but that was like how I felt about it. Like, and having done shorts, and you submit to like, and nothing against, I'm sure it's an amazing festival, but like Sundance gets what, like 13, 16,000 submissions. Like that's stupid.
Yeah.
Like you're not gonna, like they're not making great choices. No one's that smart. Like it doesn't even
And it
matter.
doesn't
Like
necessarily do anything for you. The winners
and
of
it doesn't. I mean,
Sundance don't necessarily make money.
it doesn't mean that and it's even and again, I don't want to like down. I'm sure they're all amazing films. Like the first AD on this movie did this movie called Fancy Dance. It was like one Sundance, and it didn't get picked up until the end of this year, right? So like it was jury prize winning. I
Yeah,
couldn't find a
exactly.
distributor for years, like, which is nothing against anything, but it's just sort of like there's no guarantees was sort of my feeling about that. So like I
Yeah.
part of even this movie I knew had the short, I had a few other things, and it had Angus, so I felt like I just want to sell this movie. I want someone to want this movie. And it was just looking for partners that were on board with the movie that we were making, and we're like, that was always more like what I was about. I was less interested in a festival run and more like who's the right distributor, who's the right sales agent for the movie. So thankfully, Luke had sent the movie out to a couple of people, and we got a really great. Like they were just, it's just like you're looking for the people that behave or say the right things or whatever. Like really sound like they get the movie that you have, not some other fantasy. And they were like, Paradigm was our sales agent, and they were like, we get this movie. We've sold movies like this. We know what to do with this. And they also said they kind of mirrored the same festival thing. They're like, there's 3 festivals that are going to change the price of your movie. Everything else is just vanity. So I was like, okay, that's my belief. Um, because I had done the shorts, and like the ones that you submit to everything, and then the difference between like having an online short that does well, like a viral short, and like your short that got into a couple of festivals, like was night and day. Like the
Yeah.
one that did well online, what it did for me, all the other things was like just totally different.
Yeah.
So I
Virality
was always
wins
more like
everything.
everything. Like so, like all the whatever the fucking shit is, it doesn't really matter comparatively to, at least in my experience, and I'm sure other people have had different things. Um, so, but like they sort of had said the right things, and so really, I was really only focused on trying to sell the movie. I wasn't that interested in submitting to anywhere, and I didn't because I was like, because that can also be like you having done the visual effects too, and having done so many of them. I kind of always think now, like you hear the stories about. This is how I look at it now. You hear the apocryphal stories about Star Wars, right? And that George Lucas shows it, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is such a piece of shit, George." And but having done it's a visual effects movie, and like I used to think, "Oh, that's a sign of whatever," but now having done it, I was like, "You know what that is? You have the greatest directors on earth, and none of them can imagine what this movie looks like until they see it, because like it doesn't look right." And even I
Yeah.
was having that while I was doing the movie. Like we have a fly, and we had like a Photoshop still of just like a fly that we were like moving around, so we could kind of you're placing out what it's supposed to be, but it looked stupid. And I know there's no person on earth that knows it better than me. And I felt different after I got like a temp VFX shot done for it, and I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. I feel differently about what I'm watching now. And if I feel different, then you can't really expect anybody else to feel different. So like people accept rough cuts to film festivals all the time. I would not do that because I would never do that again. I don't think, unless there's
Yeah. I get what
some
you're saying.
reason. Like it. So basically, I was just doing post and trying to finish the movie.
But like, did
And
your
I had this
sales
like
agent go directly to a big distributor, or do they
Yeah,
go
they
territory by territory and then
so
like?
they sort of did they didn't do so they kind of went out to people, right? So they do, like we kind of I basically finished part of it because I wanted the movie to be like a Christmas movie. They're like, if you want this movie to come out at Christmas time, you have to sell it in June. Like June's your drop off date. Like you have to sell it by then if you want anyone to like put this out in Christmas. So I basically finished the movie on time to like show it in June. We sent out links. We cut a trailer to sort of like make it like this is a marketable movie. Like part of like I would like for me, I was like, we have to tell people that this is a marketable movie. This isn't maybe they would figure it out on their own, but like just remind people like this is a sellable movie that has fun stuff in it.
Did you cut the
You know,
trailer?
yeah. So me and my editor Nick, like it was one of those conversations I remember having early on, and I was like, let's cut a trailer because I don't want there's just so much going against you. I was just like, let's just cut a trailer that shows that this could be a fun movie. You can sell
Well,
there's like a sellable movie here.
it looks
You
good.
know,
And that's the thing is,
well
I feel like
that's
the
not my
trailer is
trailer.
more important than the movie when it comes to selling it. I mean, there were so many
That's
times that
not
I had people not even watch the movie; they just watched the trailer and said, "Okay, I'll get it."
Yeah, I think that's I mean that's totally how it is. But we didn't that's not what the trailer that's out there is one that was cut by Well Go and a trailer house that they hired. But like we made a sales trailer for internal
Oh,
sales
gotcha.
trailer we made.
Okay.
So we sort of had cut that on our own just to sort of say, I think this is a worthwhile movie. So we did that. What else? So anyway, so we go out to go sell the movie in June. We have some offers on the table. One of them is from the place that we went with, Well Go, and they were just the most aggressive about the movie. And again, you have all like the horror stories you were hearing, especially like last year. I think it's still the same. Like it was just a rough time to sell a movie, and it was a rough. Maybe that's like what it's like all the time, and you're hearing how like what's the movie Acme versus whatever. Like they're just canceling movies. They don't release movies. Like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Batman movie. Like we had some real concerns. So like we had talked to some place that was was a Lionsgate affiliate, and I was like, oh, their sales point was like, oh, well, you'll get a Lionsgate movie, and I was like, great. What about Christmas? They're like, no way, that's never going to happen. And just sort of feeling like there's a machine here. If they put it in some test, or they don't do some test, or they do whatever, you're kind of at the mercy of what's going to happen. How they feel,
Yeah.
if they don't get the feedback that they want, or are they going to do anything with the movie? All those kinds of things. So when we chose Well Go, they had been very aggressive about the movie and also felt like they were a small place. And they had movies, they had done a bunch of Korean movies that I really liked. They were like mostly kind of known for releasing Korean and Asian cinema, like action Hong Kong cinema and Korean movies. So like they did the Train to Busan and The Man from Nowhere and like
Oh, yeah. Nice.
if you're into those movies, you're like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know, like it was that funny thing. Like I know who Well Go is. That's awesome. And they also sell DVDs, so it just sort of felt like that was a good choice for us. I think it was. They've been really wonderful, but that was sort of the process there. And then, unfortunately, I mean, tragically, Angus passed away right around the same time we got into Fantastic Fest. I had kind of just told him, and then he passed away,
Dang.
which is terrible. Which is terrible, and it was
Yeah,
awful.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, it was crazy. I remember having that experience. In a way you hope that never happens.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was
Yeah, there's no
terrible.
words for that. That's just sad, basically.
Yeah, it's just sad. I mean, sad. I mean, like it was, and I had been because we had just I had just had him do some ADR work, so like we had just kind of talked, and I was last text I sent him was that we were in Fantastic Fest, and then it was gone like a couple of days later, um, which is terrible, sad. Um, yeah, I mean that's sort of I don't know how I've done on like giving the backstory, but that's sort of what happened with the movie, and then Wellgo made a deal with Netflix, so that's just sort of
That
that's
you
sort of like from a distribution part standpoint, like that's sort of what the story has been. We sold it to Wellgo, and then I picked up a foreign sales agent right around the same time as we got into Fantastic Fest, and they're kind of selling off the different markets, and we'll just see how it all kind of nets out. So like I think it's in about half the world that it's been sold to right now, but like the initial go out was like, okay, let's go to Netflix, let's go to Hulu, let's go to everybody. But like all those business models have had changed pretty drastically
yeah.
since the time, even from the time I shot, where like during COVID, they would like, you know, they were just given, like everyone was like, because Netflix was such an aggressive buyer, like then Hulu would offer like $1 million base, and like so it was just like a different game,
But
like
now, I mean, like, do you? I mean, you don't have to say if you don't want to, but like with the deals that with Welgo's made you, have they at least earned back the budget, or are
I
you
think
still
we're
waiting on
close.
like residuals or whatever to?
We're pretty close, I think, right now with what we have. I think we're, there's some, like I said, my music costs were higher than I was expecting. Finishing costs, there's all these like extra costs that you have to kind of cover. But I think we're pretty close to making. I would say we're that's on the horizon. But you're kind of waiting for. I'll get the movie came out in November, so I'll get Q what four numbers at the end of Q1. So it's
So the
sort of
more, even with Netflix, does the more people who watch it does result in more money, or is it like an
I
upfront kind
will.
of thing? Do you
They
know?
do an upfront deal. So we got an upfront deal from Netflix. So we won't make any more from Netflix, but there is the just the contributing factor of like it's a bigger movie now and more people know about it now. Like just
Yeah, so
it'll
you'll
be
get.
interesting to see how.
What are the other avenues where you can still pull in from? Just the other streaming
There's,
channels, or do you have
there's
DVD?
the
Do you have?
others. So again, with Well Go, they do that. Like a big part of their business still is that they have a physical media arm. So they're already before Netflix. There already was DVDs in Walmart, and you can buy them online. I think so.
If I
Yeah,
see it in my Walmart, I'm getting it, and then I'm
do
gonna
it.
have you sign it somehow.
I like this plan, but I think but that is part of the so like it has like there is a tangible benefit where like maybe if we had sold it outright to Netflix up front, like there would never be another dime from Netflix. Is sort of how their operation works. But it's they have it for a period of time and then it'll go into the world and someone else can pay for it and whatever. Or just so like Well Go has the movie for, the next what, 30 years, something like that. But then we have residual deals. So like as soon as they sort of make back the minimum guarantee, then in theory we'll be sharing profit. And that was again reason why I kind of went with them. I had a friend who had done a movie with them and had said like, "Oh yeah, we're getting our residuals back." And so I was like, "Oh hey, I've heard enough
If
stories
you,
that
yeah, if
then
you have
people,
somebody that has had success with them, yeah, it's like, all right, then
right,
you're better than 90% of the other one. That's why I was really curious about because you hear so many of these, not really horror stories. It's more just like the when you're faced with reality to where it's like even something like Netflix. What do you mean they won't even like cover what it costs to make the film, especially like even
oh yeah,
it's like, oh, and then it's like, well, then how do they expect me to make money
right.
at
They're only
all?
going to
You
pay
know?
what they have to pay for it, right?
Yeah,
Like they're not going to
exactly.
pay
This is what it's worth
if they
to
can
them.
pay. Yeah, like if they think someone else wants it, which is all part of the game, right? Like one of the like one of the first. I remember when we went out, and my Luke was great in like sort of setting expectations really like realistically, like because there's so many different levels of like what a minimum guarantee is or what it's like if anyone doesn't watch your movie, like all those things. Like so we had kind of lots of conversations, and I remember when Saban came back and they were like the first people to offer, and it was just like the relief of like, oh, someone wants to pay for the movie and someone doesn't want to pay like $10 for it because that'll happen too. Like they'll be like, oh, we'll pay $20,000 for your rights. You hear the stories, or you don't want, or people don't.
I
The other
had
end
an
of it is that
offer
like
that
I
was
have friends
literally
who,
$900 for world rights forever.
yeah,
It was less than
yeah.
$1,000. I was like, "Are you what?"
Are you kidding me? Like what? Why would I
It
do
was
that?
like that was the first like true like blowback I'd ever had where it was like I was like I thought that they had like misunderstood the currency or
Yeah.
something like that.
No, it's definitely. I mean, that's how you hear those horror stories or stories. Just like I don't want to say horror, like they are stories that you hear. Or
Yeah.
like I have friends who, so like if that, those were real tangible fears, you don't know. Um, so
But
like
it's
I
like
mean,
once
that's
you had one real one, you're like, "Okay,
once I had the
we
first
have
real one was
something
like
on the table."
you have something on the table, and then we had better offers after that. But it was like very much like, oh, great, someone wants the movie. People were interested. Some people drug their feet. Like took too long to get back to us. Like, and you're just sort of like, well, how long do we want to continue to wait for this thing? Like some people you'll never get a firm no from, and you're like, or it's just like the dream stuff, like, oh, we haven't heard back from A24 yet. And you're like, I don't know if that's going to happen. But A24, like for all their, and they're great. They also bury the shit out of movies. Like they have movies that they don't talk about. If that doesn't hit their whatever metric they think it's supposed to, they'll just bury the fucking thing. Um, because that's what people do. Like that's just
Yeah.
sort of part of like it's just
I
that part of
I've
business or
explained this. It's same with comics, and I've explained this on my channel, and I want to stress it again here. No matter what you're in, even you're the biggest or the
yeah,
smallest, everything funnels to the top. Like all that
yeah,
matters are like the top 1 to 3 things. And once those start trending, they get all the momentum. And
yeah.
so the companies push those out. They continue to funnel more money into those because those are what's working. And everything else is sort of forgotten, pushed to the side. They just sort of, because everything's the investment of you invest in 10 different things, and then
Mhm.
once one starts winning, you ignore all the other 9 and push all those one because it pays for all the others plus more. That's like the rule of whatever.
Yeah, no, it's totally like, well, you know, when we were at Fantastic Fest, there's a movie that came out that I was really excited to see. I haven't seen it yet.
Wait,
It's called
sorry.
Dream Scenario.
Fantastic Fest. I don't mean to cut you off, but was that one of the 3 that they said can move the needle as far as price?
No, it wasn't, but Fantastic Fest is a good genre festival, so it's
Yeah,
like a
because
great
I
place
love
for.
Fantastic Fest.
I
I
love
wish I could
Fantastic
get
Fest,
into that.
but it's like it's a great genre festival. So like you know, for people who know, it was like one of those like hilarious things where like for me when we got into Fantastic, Luke and I were super pumped. You know, I told the DPs like, "What's Fantastic Fest?" I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about? I love this festival. This is like the festival I would pick to get into. Like it's
Yeah.
you know." There are certain things about the movie that are like audience participation kind of things, or like where people could cheer or whatever. Like it has those kinds of things. And then there's like some, you know, I do some there's some stuff I was like, this is the right audience for this movie. You know, like the kind of people who like this kind of movie are, it's a genre festival. So like
Yeah,
for me,
yeah,
like
yeah.
that was, you know, it's that weird, you know, this is that thing of, like when I say, like a lot of filmmakers or friends, or even when I was like showing things like, oh, what's your festival plan? I was like, I don't really have a festival plan. I think like I'd like to get into this festival. I like to get into a few festivals,
No,
but not
I
like
mean
all of
that's
them.
I would literally just be like, it's fantastic, maybe 2 others, and be like, if we don't get those, then nothing else matters.
Yeah, like Fantasia, you want Fantastic. I mean, South by Southwest is great, but that's sort of a
Yeah.
different animal now, even. But like, it's not like again, like Sundance has a huge name, but you know, Reservoir Dogs came out of Sundance a very long time ago, and that is not what films that come out of Sundance look like
Not
anymore.
anymore, yeah.
So like, you know, and I think when people have that imagination, like it's really more like these other festivals that kind of you can find that audience. So I was really excited about that festival specifically, and it was a great audience, and it was really a ton of fun. But I think um, you know, but yeah, again, like I think that's again the people that we had, the sales agent we had was like, we know how to sell this movie, not like how to sell some other movie. They're like, we know how to sell this movie. We know how to sell like an action thriller movie. This is the thing that we can do.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, you know what I mean? Like I think that's a huge
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of like just unfortunately I know people don't like to talk about marketing or whatever with their movies, but like you should really be thinking about it. I was thinking about it like when I was casting, you know what I mean? Like if I hadn't gotten Angus and then a few other actors, like I would have done a different type of movie. It would be at a smaller scale. I would have done certain things because it just, let's just be honest about like how many movies have you seen in your life with truly an unknown cast that took fire or got anywhere? And it's like, what is it, like the Blair Witch Project?
No,
You know
you're
what I mean?
truly
Like
you
like
what
you're asking for an impossibility to happen of like someone's going to care about your indie movie, and then you're going to remove the only thing. You're going to remove like actors from the situation. That's the only way people take chances generally on anything. Like
no, you've
I don't
broken
know.
all the barriers. You're now gonna be like one of the outliers that people study. I mean, I've learned a lot. This is really I mean, it's kind of like if I were to summarize sort of the key points, it sounds like you just had a great hook and a great script. Like that's what like started the momentum going is that people really that read it liked it, which then allowed
Yeah.
you to use the connections you had, which the main key one was the casting agent, and who was then able to hook you up with an actor that really liked the script that was trending because he was in a hit show. I never watched
Mhm.
Euphoria. I didn't really get into it. I like tried the first episode and I was just kind of like this feels too weird to me, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
I love drug stuff, but like it
It's
anyway.
a different type of show. But it is
Yeah.
definitely like a certain demographic. And he is like an outlier, kind of like a standout. Like for me, like I really loved him in the show. The show was very stylized, and he was like just like felt like such a real person because he was a real person. Like they found him on the street and he was just like street casted, and they're like, "Oh, you're," and he had that amazing charisma on camera, where like he just,
Yeah, and it works for your movie as well.
yeah,
And but yeah, and then you just went through the motions of actually just getting it done, and you just took on everything, did it, made it work. And since you have those skill sets already,
right,
you were able to fill in the gaps where things just didn't, work out during production, fixed it in
yeah,
post, had your solid team that you had from your background in ads and commercials and stuff like that. And then because you did everything right, then you were able to break through the noise because you had that star, you had the
right,
quality there, and you just went straight for the sale. You weren't going for the vanity, and you're just trying and I don't really it's a and to me this is like, oh yes, this is like great inspiration. Like it's just like
um,
you can do these kind of things and you did it. And now I'm wondering like if you're gonna start getting like people coming at you and you'll have like you now have like a successful movie under your belt, which is like gold to people
yeah,
to us, like you now have the sort of golden ticket as much as you can get it to where it's like, I did the thing, you did exactly what you set out to do, which is make a great film that gets recognized somewhat as a great film, and kind of
yeah,
the merit for that or the quality of that is trending on Netflix.
yeah.
Big movies are happy to have that happen, much less your first movie, basically.
Oh no, it's great. It's incredible. I think like you can't ask for that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like it was. I went even when it was on Netflix and they weren't going to release it. I was like, I don't know what that means. Like you have like one of the actors, uh, Jessica, who's the actress in the film, sent me. She had she's like I had in the top 10 on Netflix on my vision board, and I was like, that's pretty awesome. That was like one
Oh,
of
I was
the.
gonna ask, I was like, do you do any of that kind of
I
mentalism at
don't.
all?
I don't know if I guess for me, I my mentalism is just that I hope people like the movie, and that I'm doing the best I can to like hopefully make it a likable thing. There's no, no, it's not for everything. No one's gonna love everything you do, and I kind of have experienced that at every part of my career. Where, like the first short I ever did, that kind of maybe not the first short, this first short like that I had got I had done like a film sponsorship, and it had won best short at SIF. But like that same day that it won best short at SIF, there was like a review in the newspaper that said it was terrible, and I was like it was the first review I had read, and it was like, what a piece of shit. I mean, it didn't say that exactly, but it wasn't kind. So like I remember reading like this bad review, and then I get a phone call that says, "Are you going to come to the award ceremony today?" And I was like, "Why would I come to the award ceremony?" She's like, "You should come." I was like, "Why would I come? I'm in Tacoma with my dad." And she's like, "You should come." And then I show up, and I got the short. So it was just like that weird. That dichotomy is like out there, right? Where like someone's gonna tell you great, someone's gonna tell you suck, and just sort of like I just try to like tune out that noise of what that is, and
Yeah,
hopefully
you have
if
to.
you
Otherwise,
have
it'll
to,
kill you. Because like
kills
you
you.
can just get drug around and yet let your emotions tear you apart. Like
Yeah,
that's constantly where I'm at. Because I get like
yeah,
I reach out to a lot of as you kind of have to do is you have to reach out, talk to a lot of people, and you'll
yeah,
just get people that really kind of crush you, and then other people that are like really like all about like you're doing the right
yeah.
thing, especially as a writer.
Oh
Like
man,
it's hard for people to be like it's just not good, and then
yeah.
and it's just like, but this other person said it's like,
Is that the person that it was? It's
yeah, like,
you're like you can't.
am I good? Am I not? And I'm always in the stage of like, I
I
don't
always do it.
know.
For me, I do it this way. I'm not that great, and I'm not that bad. So like the people
Yeah,
who tell me I'm amazing, they're not right, and the people who say that I'm fucking a piece of shit, they're not right either. So as long
that's
as I
how
know that they're both
yeah.
like
I
they're
know
both
where I'm
wrong,
at. I'm right in the
I'm
middle.
not. I'm not Martin Scorsese. I'm not anything special. But I'm also not the worst person who ever crossed the earth. Like I know those. I have to be somewhere in the middle, and therefore I trust that hopefully this will find the thing. So this has been, and there's a validation that definitely with the Netflix part of it, because I always felt like it was the kind of movie that people would respond to, and that's been really great. And watching in the theater has been wonderful. Where like it just sort of has that. It plays well in a theater. Like there's something fun about watching it with a group of people. And it's even better. Actually, the theater experience. I wish you know in the fantasy world. I think it's a good theater movie because I like selfishly, like I've watched it now in a few size theaters, and the bigger the theater, the better generally because the number of people who get it go up. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's like a fairly black comedy kind of movie in my mind, but then it's a very like I'm really going for the jugular in terms of like it being stressful. So I don't know how many people are laughing when I hoped that they would laugh because it just maybe isn't playing. It's like in my mind, it's like this is kind of funny, right? Like in my mind, there's like an absurdity to what's happening that then like is inherently
Did
dark.
you do any like tests, audience reading, even just
Other
like
than
for
just like,
yourself, like with family or something?
yeah, so I'm definitely doing that. Like you send it to friends, you send it to whatever, and some people like it, some people don't. Lots of people liked it. Like I really cherish negative feedback. Um, because like again, you're not going to fix anything if they hate the movie outright. But like negative feedback, kind of for me is always like certain like if you know it's that thing, right? If lots of people are saying the same kind of thing, you know,
Yeah.
or about the same kind of thing, you're like, okay, there's a problem here. They're wrong about how to fix it. I think generally, like you don't know how to fix the problem, but you're everyone's kind of identifying a thing. Maybe it's sort of how it feels, or you know, it's just like an interesting. I don't know. There's like a process. It's a weird like when do you trust that process? When don't you? You know, there's you haven't seen the movie, but there's a train sequence in the movie, and there was a moment where like we had one group of friends watch it, and they really were like, "This is dumb. You should cut this thing out. You could cut this out. Like technically, you could cut it out of the movie, and the scene like plot wise, you could get away with it." And we had that conversation. We talked about it. We looked at it, and ultimately, it felt like a visual moment in the film. And it's one of the things that I get the most comments on from like filmmakers who are like, "Oh, I really love this moment." Like, so it's that kind of thing. You're just sort of like, okay, well, this scene maybe is just, I don't know, it works for us. And it generally, like, everyone really likes this scene now. But like, there's those moments where you're like, when are we keeping the thing that belongs and it needs to stay there? And when are we fixing things so that people don't get confused or start making up their own storyline or whatever the stupid thing is that kind of happens. And as long as you're honest about that, I think that's sort of, I would have loved to get. And I mean, maybe I'm just a weirdo, but like, I would have loved to get feedback and notes and like, what do people hate? What do people not like? What are the, you know, and there's certain
Yeah,
things
or
you
like
can't say.
literally a test live audience in a theater where you're just sitting in the back watching people be like, "Oh, he laughed there. Oh, that guy
Yeah,
got freaked out."
yeah. Unfortunately, like yeah, the first time I really had that with strangers was at Fantastic Fest, and that was really, but it was a wonderful experience because it was like, oh, this works. Like these are all mostly strangers, and then the biggest theater that we had was like the best screening that I had. And again, like I was just sort of that feeling I had seen other movies in there. You know, I watched The Creator in the same theater, and I could like, and I sat in the exact same seat. You know, and I basically gauged audience reaction against like a $90 million movie, and I was like, I think we're okay. Like I think
That's awesome.
you know, and maybe
It's
I don't
like
want to
we
sound, you know, other than like, I just felt like, oh, I can see we're getting good reaction. People are on board with what's going on. People are on board with Angus. People are laughing when they should laugh. They're laughing at the jokes that should be there. You know, they're gasping when they should gasp. Like we're getting the reaction that we want. And that felt really like, you know, just validating. Like, oh yeah, this works. However, it's not going to work for everybody. Not everyone's going to like it. People are going to be, oh, that's dumb. That's stupid. You know, like, but in my mind, it's like Die Hard. It's like, I'm trying to make like a fun action movie and it's supposed to have lots of twists and turns and like, you know, how do we make it feel like we're not stuck in the same room all the time? Like those are like, I
that
don't know.
yeah, yeah, those are just figuring those out is worth that's like learning how to make cocaine, and then like giving it to people and being like, "Oh, they got high. They got high in the right way. They didn't feel like they smoked weed or something like that." You did everything right chemically. You put their it's I don't know. Yeah, it's like storytelling. Yeah, it's such a movie making is such a profound task. Like it seems
Yeah.
like it should be so simple, and I it's just like, no, it is not. And it's just really awesome that yeah, you did it right. Now you're reaping the results. So I
Yeah.
won't hold you anymore. Um and also congrats on funding The Fox Came from the Woods.
Yes.
Is there
So it's just,
anything else that so yeah, what's next from here? Basically the two major projects I know you had like you're now like just like you did it right and now you just wait, or do you already have other projects lined up?
I've got some stuff I'm working on. You know, and again, like I think it's just sort of trying to figure out what the right next thing is. I have another movie that I'm trying to get going. That's like an indie, like more like just like an indie movie that's um about vampires. And then I'm just sort of going through the Hollywood thing and trying to like, you know, meet people, find
Do you have an
open.
agent as a director?
Yeah, so like I have an agent actually and a manager, so which has been great. It's been like it's helpful to have like those kinds of people around in your corner, setting up phone calls, and so like, and that part's been really exciting too. And I think like you're saying, like in LA or in Hollywood, you're taking lots of meetings, so you're going to be meeting a lot of people. You're going to talk to a lot of people. And I think I learned a lot from the first time when I did the short, in that like I took a bunch of meetings and I kind of, like I said, I turned a bunch of like interested parties into generals, which isn't like the smart way to go about this. Um, so I would never recommend that. If anyone wants to know like the right way to do a movie, I would do what um, the guy who did Whiplash did, and like you should write you know the Whiplash guy's story, right? Like
No, I
that's
don't
like I
actually.
think
Sorry.
his is like the greatest. This is like, but when I heard it, I was like, oh, this guy really understands what's going on in a way that like that's fucking genius, right? Where he wanted to make La La Land, so he had the script for La La Land. He's like, I'm never gonna make La La Land as my first movie, so he writes Whiplash. He knows he won't get the money for Whiplash unless it's a short, and so he's like this far ahead and knows
Yeah,
like
yeah,
how
yeah.
each
I
one of these.
got you. Okay.
So and like that's sort of like I'm not that dialed in,
Hey,
so
I
I'm
did the same thing
trying.
with comics.
Yeah,
I had my big movie or my big comic, which was Liquid Kill, and I was like,
yeah,
this is a massive thing that it can't be my first. A, I don't want to screw it up if it's my first. So we wrote another one, and they were like, well, we can't do that until we make something before that to show people that we can at least make this small one, which was It Eats
yeah,
What Feeds It. So we made a web comic to build up momentum to find a great artist to make It Eats What Feeds It, made
yeah.
it eats what feeds it so that we could then get the momentum and the publisher to release Liquid
Jesus,
Kill.
yeah. Yeah, I think you're playing. That's the right game. Like I think same thing for movies, right? Like it's a lot of like forethought, but I think if you're doing that in the right order, hopefully it works out. So I'm doing that, and then on top of that, I'm just sort of doing the Hollywood game, which is like you take a meeting, you talk to a person,
Yeah.
you find out what's going on, you read a script,
Yeah,
and
just soak it in and see like where you might fit in rather
yeah,
than because you already did the hard work of like taking the ball in your court and just driving forward until now you can sort of pick and choose and let people find you and you find cool
but we'll
projects.
see. But I think the other part of it, like one of the things that I was told to me, I think, again, these are like lessons that I felt like I wish I had heard more when I was first there. And when we did the trailer for the Maiden of Death was what it was called for the Grindhouse thing, and we go in there, we meet Robert Rodriguez's team, and one of his producers is there, and she tells us this story about Desperado, which is like a movie I really love,
Yeah.
and but like I knew, like in my brain, my child's brain was that he did El Mariachi and then he went and made Desperado, and that is not what happened.
Yeah,
He
no.
did El Mariachi, and then basically they bought his script for Desperado, and then it just sat around for years, and like they kept having to make stupid changes to the script, and apparently like what he did is he was like, and then he went and made this made for TV movie called Road Racers, and because of that, that got Desperado off the ground. But like this incredible success of El Mariachi was not enough to get him to that next movie. He had to do this other little thing. So like that's in my head is like, okay, keep that in mind too.
It's
Like you might
man.
still,
That's what you see in everything is that I can't think of like a good example is like Kanye West was like he had already won. He was already a big producer on a big label, and yet they still
yeah,
treated him like, nah, you're not ready to rap. And then he's
right,
like, but I made this great video. I did all this stuff myself, and they're still like, but you're not like gonna be one of the main people that we're gonna hype up. And he like forced his way through it. And you're learning that with like everything. It's like just every machine of every industry, not just Hollywood, is always like, oh yeah, pat yourself on the back. You graduated college. Now here you need
yeah,
if you really want to, do whatever, you got to do all this.
yeah,
Or like you can't get this without that. You need years. You need 10 years of experience. Oh, you made people laugh at one show. Yeah, you can't be a headliner
yeah,
comedian yet. You need
yeah.
to do this or that. Yeah. So like you're now at the like, oh yeah, you made a good film. All right, go make six more.
Yeah, something. We'll find out how it goes. I'm just sort of, it's I'm just trying to like keep it in my mind, like, okay, I'm having fun meetings, you're doing your thing, and hopefully something like that pops. But also at the same time, I'm like, okay, I really need to get that's sort of why, the vampire movie, I'm like, okay, what's my next step to actually get that to start? And like, how can I not have to go through the exact Hollywood machine? Because there's also development hell and you could end up in there for years. And like it just,
Yeah.
like I saw a script the other day and they've had the property for 6 years, and you're like, okay, like it could be cool, but like it's exciting. It's fun to be like in there and talking about it. But like you're like, oh, you've had this for 6 or 7 years. Like, how long is this actually going to take to get made? Is it ever going to get made? Um, and that's just like a normal par for the course.
Mm.
You know, you'll read
And
about
it's
all the
hard.
time. You'll be like, oh, this movie's coming out, and then you'll be like, oh, how many times have they? How many times have they tried to make Akira, and how much money they spent trying to make that movie? And I'm like, is it ever going to happen? Maybe not. I don't know if it should, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
hear about it.
But I, all this, like talking to you today, is like I get like the adrenaline of the how much all this sucks, but just like seeing like it like work out is like the adrenaline to where you're like, but it's all worth it, you know, because it's just like this whole thing is a yeah, there's so much to it. It's all a gamble, and it's just cool to see how you've done it outside of the machine. I mean, you're in Seattle,
Yeah.
you're not inside LA, and so it's really cool. So yeah, we'll definitely have to stay in touch, and I
Yeah.
want to let you go. It's almost been an hour and a half.
Oh, then we should go. But thanks so much, man. It's been fun. Have a great one. Yeah, if you watch the movie, let me know what you love to hear what you think.
Yeah, I'll definitely yeah, I'm gonna let you know. I'll give you my
All right.
real honest feedback.
There we go. Real, I'll take it.